Welcome to the third lesson on trigonometry. Again, it's the study of angles and side lengths in right triangles. So just like in the sine ratio lesson, I'd like you to take a minute and name the sides of this triangle. So tell me which one is opposite, adjacent, and which one's the hypotenuse. This time we're learning about the cosine ratio, which is the third one out of all three ratios. So the cosine ratio, you may be able to guess already, is cosine of theta, whichever angle you're talking about, is equal to the length of the adjacent side over the length of the hypotenuse. So if you remember, the tangent ratio was opposite over adjacent, the sine ratio was opposite over hypotenuse, and now cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So the one we work with is cos, or cosine of theta equals A over H. So this is the one that we're working with, and this is the one you need to start when you're doing your work. Okay, so the steps for finding an angle in an example is just like the steps for finding the tangent and the sine of an angle. You identify your three sides, write down your formula, start plugging it in, and solve for the unknown. So here's our first example. Find theta, which is over here. So step 1, we label H for hypotenuse. 15 over here is adjacent to theta, and 8 is opposite. So step 2, whoops, I forgot to change this. This should say cosine ratio. Apologize for that. Cosine of theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. Cos theta equals, adjacent was 15, hypotenuse is 17. You rearrange and you get theta is equal to the inverse cosine of 15 over 17. And then when you sub that in, again making sure that your calculator has degrees selected, you get approximately 28 degrees. Okay, pretty straightforward, I hope. To find an unknown side, again the steps are basically the same as finding the tangent and the sine. You identify the sides, you determine the cosine ratio, and you solve for the unknown side. I believe this one is also wrong. This should also say cosine. There we go. So you should update that in your notes, cosine formula, cosine ratio. Alright, so step 1, we're given 52 degrees, so that's our theta. Here's our hypotenuse, here's our adjacent side, and here's our opposite side. Okay, so we write cosine of theta is equal to A over H. Then we know that the cosine of 52 cosine of 52 degrees is equal to, adjacent is 115 meters, hypotenuse is labeled B. Once we rearrange, we'll find that B is equal to 115 divided by the cosine of 52 degrees. So when you plug that into your calculator, you're going to go 115 divided by cos 52 degrees. Make sure your calculator is set to degrees, and then you'll find out that the cosine, or sorry, the length of side B, the hypotenuse, is approximately equal to 186 0.8 meters. Okay, so there's the steps you need to show, all the steps there. If this was a word problem, you would have a sentence at the end where you explain, but since this is just a straightforward question, you can just leave it like that. Make sure you have all these steps though, and make sure you remember that you need to have your units when you're given units.